America are restaurant jobs. They all pay poverty wages.
When labor activists came to Washington to demand higher wages for restaurant workers, they clashed with an unexpected adversary: restaurant workers.
It hurts the very people that policy should help.
They're on a savior complex, trying to save people that didn't need saving in the first place.
This sub-minimum wage for tipped workers is a direct legacy of slavery. It was created to allow restaurants to hire newly freed slaves, in particular black women.
To compare American slavery to my profession is the most disgusting rhetorical tactic.
This is moving all across the country, and that's
Look at DC as a cautionary tale. People have lost their jobs.
You've regulated positions like busser and runner and food expediter out of existence.
It didn't impact their pockets, or so they thought.
Reason looks at the unintended consequences of a campaign to mandate higher wages, which might be coming soon to a city near you.
In Washington, D.C. in the 90s, it was chaotic. It was really, really fun. Chain smoking cigarettes, making drinks, just a bunch of kids who came to work hard and make money.
We'd leave work with a bunch of cash in our pocket.
And then 2000s come around, it starts building on itself, and it becomes this city of like growth and Michelin star restaurants. It really provided the next level for people who wanted to go out and dine and drink.
The money was amazing. At the end of a good bar shift, what some people had to spend an entire week scraping in an office 9 to 5, I could make that in a night.
Then, in 2016, labor activists launched a national movement to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. But waiters and bartenders in DC weren't significantly affected by the change. That's due to a carve-out in the law, which allowed restaurants to pay tipped workers only about a third of the minimum wage in their paychecks, just as long as the difference was made up in tips. This policy, known as the tip credit, exists in most parts of the country. But labor activists set out to change that. If the minimum wage was $15 an hour, they said, that's what restaurants should be required to pay, on top of tips. Saru Jayaraman, who has a law degree from Yale and a master's degree from Harvard, is the founder of One Fair Wage, which has been leading a nationwide movement to bring an end to the tip credit. Instead of trying to win the support of legislators, One Fair Wage's strategy is to bring the issue directly to voters by placing referendums on local ballots.
We're going to stop the National Restaurant Association, which we call the other NRA, from going to Capitol Hill.
Jayaraman was successful in getting celebrities to amplify her cause.
Sitting next to Amy is Saru Jayaraman. Give it up for Saru, everyone.
But the movement has never won the support of the people it's supposed to be helping, restaurant workers themselves. That's why, when Maine voters approved a referendum to end the tip credit, the state legislature overturned it. The same thing happened in D.C. Voters approved a referendum, and then it was overturned in the city council because restaurant workers opposed it.
I'm struck by the fact that there's so many workers who are testifying against the initiative. Nobody has come up to me who works in a restaurant has said they support this.
I sat down with 8 current and former restaurant workers to hear what they had to say about tipping.
The tipping system works well for everybody. It works well for guests, for them to show their direct appreciation, and most importantly, allows us to maximize our income.
In 2022, DC waiters and waitresses were making, on average, $50,790 a year, including reported tips, which was the highest wage for restaurant workers in the country. When I asked Jayaraman about these figures at a local press conference, she said that the data was wrong.
No, that's so not true. Okay. No, again, I'm happy to send you data. Sure. We have a research department. We look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We look at Square, which tells you how much people earn in tips. That's so not true. I'm happy to send you the data.
Alrighty. Jayaraman and One Fair Wage, who didn't respond to my email follow-up asking for that data, got the tip credit back on the DC ballot in 2022. And voters approved it with overwhelming support.
75% of them voted for it because it was a free toaster.
Chef Jeff Tracy is a restaurant owner in DC.
You know, I would say that 98% of voters don't understand the compensation structure for full-service restaurants. Now, they're starting to see the prices of restaurants skyrocket. They're seeing their neighborhood restaurants go out of business, and we're only halfway there.
My name is Tony T. It's for Tameldon is my last name. I've been in the bar business in DC since the early 90s. I opened this bar right here at the Pug in 2007. We just won a very, very tight race to become the best dive bar in the city according to the Washington Post. I like to call it a neighborhood bar where you can escape the office, escape your kids for a second, just a place to come in, hang out.
The elimination of the tip credit is happening gradually, but Tameldon says the Pug is already in trouble. Most of his employees' compensation used to come in the form of tips, but this year, he's required to pay a minimum of $10 an hour in salary, or about double the amount of 2 years ago. By 2027, that'll climb to $18 an hour before tips.
It is daunting trying to figure out how to make ends meet. For the first time in 17 years, I raised prices here. At our restaurant, we've taken away 9 shifts. There's only so much beer I can sell, but I can't charge somebody $7 for a Miller High Life in a place like this.
We're watching a beloved barback, a beloved busser, a dishwasher have their jobs taken away. Not because our owner-operator is an evil billionaire, but because they're an independent business owner who had to make some business decisions. And there's a callousness with which our industry is talked about.
High-end restaurants have also been impacted. Chef Jeff Tracy owns 2 locations in DC.
Going from $5.05 to what is going to be the full minimum wage, which is going to be like $18.50 by the time it's fully implemented in a couple of years, is an increase in payroll to each of my DC restaurants of $400,000. That's like doubling my rent. That is an expense that I am going to have to incur and pass through to the customer. If I absorb it, that exceeds my profit. So I can't operate on a non-profit level. I'll go out of business pretty quickly.
Jay Araman says that if DC restaurants have closed down or cut staff, it wasn't caused by the elimination of the tip credit.
Nobody had to do that. That was a choice. Since the initiative, more restaurants have opened, more workers hired. So that's how they've managed it. So some restaurants have chosen to do things a certain way, others have done it differently.
This claim comes from a report that One Fair Wage published last year called "The Sky is Not Falling, the Floor is Rising."
Anybody who eats out in DC knows that the DC restaurant industry is booming right now. The opposition is going to say things have failed and everything is horrible. The data shows the opposite.
While it's true that restaurant employment increased when the initiative was first passed, since that report, restaurant jobs have fallen 4.3% since their December peak. When I asked Jay Araman about these updated figures, again, she said my data was wrong.
Since DC started phasing out the tipped wage in May 2023, the district has lost about 700 employees at full-service restaurants. About 80% of restaurants have raised prices. About 50% of restaurants have cut workers. I'm curious what your response is to that.
So I don't know where you're getting your data, but if you look at government data that the DC Attorney General has approved, we have 10% more restaurants in the District of Columbia, 7% more restaurant jobs, and 6.8% higher wages, and that data was confirmed by the New York Times in April of this year.
Jay Araman is referring to this New York Times article, which appeared in March, and contains inaccurate data, claiming that eliminating the tip credit didn't hurt DC restaurants. Reason pointed out its mistakes to the Times, and the paper ran a correction. The original article falsely claimed that DC's restaurant workforce had increased by 3.5% because a reporter misread a Bureau of Labor Statistics website with national data, thinking it was local data. She reported that there were 14,168 service workers in Washington, D.C., but the actual figure was 14,168,000 workers nationwide. Long before the Times corrected the mistake, One Fair Wage was citing the article to back up its false claim. as Jayaraman did in response to my question. One Fair Wage also shared a video of the article's author, Times reporter Priya Krishna.
A lot of people predicted that because of the phase out of the tip minimum wage, labor costs would become too expensive and businesses would close. In DC, that hasn't been the case.
The video claims that the number of restaurants in the district grew to 3,472 in 2024. This figure is also false, since it refers to all leisure and hospitality establishments, not just restaurants, and is from 2023, not 2024. DC restaurant jobs are in fact disappearing, so owners are adjusting their billing practices. They're attempting to capture more of what customers are willing to tip by adding service charges as a percentage of the bill.
We tried to work it out. We implemented a 5% service charge. We asked the customers to adjust their tip accordingly.
Waiters also say they're taking home less.
Start talking about things like service charges that belong to the house and they can dole out as they see fit or not. It caps our income and it hurts the very workers that policy should help.
This is the only industry that currently right now our pay is being regulated by the voters. And that just makes absolutely no sense. They're on a savior complex, trying to save people that didn't need saving in the first place. The tips is the main reason why we got into this industry.
Yep.
Jayaraman has also said it was necessary to eliminate DC's tip credit because it was a racist policy.
Replacing wages with tips is a relic of slavery. Look, this inequity of the sub-minimum wage is tied to America's history of structural racism.
As a black man and also gay man, pardon my French, it's bullshit. I wouldn't have gotten into this industry if that industry would oppress me. Me working as a teacher, I made way less than I did working in this bar industry. You're talking to a black bartender. I'm telling you, this is what works for me. And it has always worked for me.
Please welcome Saru and Jayaraman. This is one of those areas where America, pretty unique, right? That we still do it by tips.
We're so unique because actually...
Restaurant workers may not agree with Jayaraman's message, but it plays well on TV.
Actually, it was around the time of slavery, around emancipation, and the restaurant industry at that time demanded the right to hire newly freed slaves, not pay them anything, and let them live on customer tips. Not everybody's as free as everybody else.
That's right. We're gonna fix that this year. Thank you, everybody.
To equate the work that I'm very good at and for which I am well compensated, that I do of my free will, which I have the agency to choose whether or not to do, to link that to slavery is, I would say, the most craven, opportunistic, really disgusting rhetorical tactic. Restaurant Opportunity Center / One Fair Wage. These are the people that are telling us how restaurants are supposed to work. They have failed at operating a restaurant like three times.
She's referring to a series of ventures spearheaded by Jayaraman in partnership with the labor-affiliated Restaurant Opportunity Center. In 2006, they started their own New York City restaurant called Colors to model how paying workers a generous salary on top of tips was a financially sustainable business strategy. The restaurant cut salaries within its first year because of financial difficulties, and its employees sued for discrimination and wage theft. And it eventually went out of business. The group opened 2 more restaurants, which also failed.
Saru Jayaraman is still referred to and quoted and invited to be the panelist talking about the restaurant industry, and this is never part of the story.
One Fair Wage is now aiming to end the tip credit in at least 25 states by 2026, though the group's most recent ballot initiative in Massachusetts was voted down by a 2/3 margin.
What do you think the future of dining looks like in Washington, D.C.?
It's devastating when you work in a restaurant. When you triple the cost of front of house labor, you're not tripling your revenue. So that is going to necessitate a lot of decisions. So maybe you're moving from a full service model to a counter service model. Maybe you're eliminating support staff. Maybe you're getting rid of some prep positions. Here are these people that we really care about whose jobs are gone. When you walk around DC, there are so many empty storefronts. There's a block in Adams Morgan that has like 6 empty storefronts, and it's crazy.
It
it's
used
like
to be thriving.
Yep, it's a puzzle. Like put the pieces together in the puzzle, and we can see that this is not working.
In 2018, we very proudly could say that the District of Columbia, that the bar and restaurant industry was 96% independently owned and operated. We can no longer say that now.
I think that the big chains are the ones that ultimately profit from this. Like the joke when Trump was running for president was a taco shop on every corner, but it's going to be a cheesecake factory instead. And that, that might be okay for some people, but it's not what I want to see. I am currently like at a barely break even point. We're just floundering around out here. I have regulars here who I've known for years. I have regulars here who now I know their kids. Their kids now are able to come in and have a beer. I'm part of the fabric of this neighborhood, and I'm part of the fabric of my favorite city in the country. I do not know when it gets to $17 an hour how to stay open, unless I bartend 7 shifts. I'm too old to stay up that late, so I have to figure something out.